Hello, fellow nerds. Tion here, coming to you with the debut edition of Who Did It Better. And today we're going to take a look at my two favorite franchises in all of science fiction, and that is Battlestar Galactica, specifically the reimagined series from '04, and Star Wars. And what we're going to look at specifically is how these two great franchises utilized a specific plot device. One in Episode 1, Season 1, called 33 of Battlestar Galactica, and two in The Last Jedi. And in each of these films, or each of these productions, the writers, the producers chose to put our heroes in a position of being pursued across faster than light travel by a ruthless, determined enemy, and put them in this dire predicament of not being able to utilize that jump away or that hyperspace jump to effect an escape. That's a really good plot device, and it has a lot of potential. I think that this is a great discussion to have, and that's the whole point of this, is to be a discussion. You know, I'm certainly going to give my opinion, and I'm certainly going to tell you what I think about some different things. But at the end of the day, I really want you guys to comment on this stuff. I want you guys to talk. I want you guys to interact. I want you to hit the subscribe button, hit the bells for notifications. Please, please, please give me your opinion. I just ask that you guys try to keep it civil. If you're going to, disagree, that's cool. Everybody's got their own opinion. There's no problem with that. But if we disagree, let's agree to do it civilly, because we got enough chaos in the world without coming here and yelling and screaming at each other. I really welcome you guys here. I want to have a great discussion. Please, please, please comment, and please, please, please share. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started, because I got a lot to talk about. Okay, so we're going to open up with Battlestar Galactica. And one of the things that these two franchises have in common is they're franchises, right? They're series. They're series of movies, series of TV shows that are beholden to canon events that occurred before the events that you're seeing on the screen. We get in Battlestar Galactica the montage of scenes that kind of brings you up to date on what goes on previously on Battlestar Galactica. And then they show us what's happened to lead into the events that are going to be important to this particular story. We see this montage, and now we open directly with Gaius Baltar, and we hear the ticking of the clock. And there's a lot of things that goes on in the opening of this show. We hear the ticking of the clock. We see the analog clock, and there's quick cuts to and away from different things that are showing us that a lot of things are happening at the same time and giving us this feeling that there's a lot of activity and a sense of urgency. We see the Vipers scrambling out of their chutes, and in the background you can see ships jumping away. And we know as Battlestar Galactica fans that means that the Cylons are coming, right? We're trying to get away because that's how we make our getaway. We do this faster than light jump. Now we cut into Lee, and he tells us 1 minute out. We see a clock again, a digital clock, counting down from 1 minute. We see Kara in her cockpit. She looks terrible. She's shaking herself awake. So again, we get this sense of what's happening, but they don't tell us what's happening. And we see a clock again on the bridge. We see the bridge crew is tired. We see Ty shaking someone awake, get up. And we see Duala kind of shaking, kind of encouraging herself to stay awake. No one's on the screen telling me that, hey, you know what? There's imminent danger and the Cylons are coming and we're in trouble. Everybody be worried. That's not what they're telling us. They're showing us, hey, the Cylons are coming, and these people have had a long couple of days. They're tired. They're haggard. It's been a long chase. Those are the things that we're seeing already. It also keeps the consistency of the mood, right? It is kind of dark. Battlestar Galactica is known to being a dark show. So it goes on ahead and continues us on this course of kind of this dark and foreboding sort of feeling that is consistent with the Battlestar Galactica theme. Gaius, meantime, cuts away with his conversation with Head 6, where they talk about God, and he talks about whether or not she's a delusion, which is, again, a theme that you're going to see throughout. And this particular B-plot is going to tie in nicely with the rest of the show, which is really cool. It keeps us focused on the events on the ship. It keeps us focused on what's going on, and we'll talk about that as it goes on. But it's really nice he's kind of a fun character because we never really know if he's crazy or if he's some kind of an empath, right? It's really a good B-plot to work with. And there is technically another B-plot that takes place on Caprica that follows Hilo. We're not going to talk about it. And so we cut away to Rosalind, who's asking, cutting it a little close this time, Billy, aren't we? And he basically makes a reference to the fact that their computers had to be rebooted again, and they're having these troubles. And again, it's showing us that there's a level of wear taking place, that there's a level of there's a level of fatigue and maybe even mechanical issues that are beginning to rear their ugly heads as this fleet is trying desperately to stay alive. And again, it does a great job of showing without telling. And then immediately, what does it cut to? It cuts to the clock, which has a tape on it that shows 33, and it shows that minute hand is approaching 33 minutes. It's a great device, and it's telling us, it's showing us right there without spelling it out. We get it. We're smart. We can follow this. And for those of you who are writers out there, I would encourage you to have a little faith in your readers. Expect them to be a little bit smart, and don't insult their intelligence by trying to explain every single thing. As long as it makes sense, they'll probably be smart enough to stay with you. So we cut to the CIC where Dwala is telling us that a lot of the ships are having trouble with their FTL drives. Actually, she tells Adama. And Adama is looking preoccupied, looking straight at a clock, saying, "We're getting slower." And Ty, who's standing next to him, looking up with that same dramatic tension, says, "Maybe this time." Kind of this wistful, hopeful, hope against hope voice of his. And then it cuts to the clock, and we watch the final couple seconds tick down, and we see all these digital clocks start to blink and beep. And then we see the analog clock, and its hand reaches 33 minutes. And it has that ancient buzz that only a few of us are probably old enough to even recognize. And it's a great effect, and it makes us understand that, hey, time is up. And of course, the Cylons show up, and the disappointment exhibited by the command crew in the CIC is palpable. And Adama, who remains stoic and continues to stare up at the monitor, says, "Not this time, maybe the next. I have a plan for the next cycle." And so hopefully there's a nugget of an idea to save our brave heroes. And then we cut to Baltar, who's going on this rant about how there are limits, and you can see that his head six is sitting next to him, looking at him and listening, and he said, 5 days, there are limits, practical limits that we can't go beyond. And of course she's not actually sitting there, and these two old people looking across at him like he's crazy, and he's just ranting on and on and on. But it's a great use of character to show both underpin the fact that this is truly a desperate situation, and there really should be people that are barely holding it together. 5 days without sleep, this is going to kill us. We're at the end of our rope. Something has to happen, and it's a great way to both kind of comically do it, because we do kind of smirk at crazy Baltar, but we're also understanding that there's a lunatic edge to that's very real and very understandable, and probably reflects a number of the people in the fleet who are like, how much longer can we continue this? And the answer we know is not much longer. We are in late. We didn't get the last 5 days of fluff, but we're cutting right to the chase now, and we're knee deep in this. We cut to your obligatory battle, and everybody jumps away just in time. And as they do, there's this moment of relief, and then set the clock, and everybody sets up. And so any of that tension that may have ebbed just a little bit, it doesn't go far. And that's a great job of keeping that dramatic tension going, continuing with the mood that you've established in this opening scene. And I love it. And I think it's great. And it leaves us wanting to know what's going to happen next. So let's check out The Force Awakens. Battlestar Galactica has its opening montage. Star Wars has its opening crawl. The first words of the opening crawl of The Last Jedi are, "The First Order reigns supreme." Now that's going to create a tremendous problem, and the reason it creates a problem is because of continuity. We talked before about how these are episodic movies, episodic TV shows, beholden to the previous movies. And The Force Awakens left off on a cliffhanger. And that cliffhanger literally picks up where it left off in The Last Jedi. So we establish a time marker when the story arc that we're not going to discuss involving Luke Skywalker and Rey intersects with our story towards the end of the film. We are basically locked into a time continuum that doesn't allow for a lot of military political shifts, not the seismic shift that this portrays. And it does immediately create a little bit of a disconnect. It would be recoverable if this were explained in the movie, but it really isn't. So the opening crawl fades away into the blackness, and we cut down to this beautiful planet where the Raddus is in orbit. It's got the rings. It zips past the Raddus, past the ant train of cargo ships, down to the planet. We see some people trying to get the last of the folks aboard the final ships to get out of there before the First Order gets here. And then we hear, bam, sonic boom. And they look to the sky, oh no. And you can actually see the Star Destroyers in orbit. And I think that is such a cool effect. And it is such a cool message of how big and how impressive these ships are. It's a great introduction that we've never seen before in the Star Wars universe. So now we cut to the orbital view of the Star Destroyers and General Hux on the bridge. General Hux immediately starts talking about how he has orders from General Snoke and blah, blah, blah. So we have a lot of what? We have a lot of tell. We have a lot of talking about now I have them, and already there are little tiny pinholes starting to drain out our attention. He does say, bring Captain Kennedy in with this dreadnought, and the dreadnought comes in, and it's 3 times as big as the other Star Destroyers. It's impressive. And Captain Kennedy does seem to be the one villain in this crew who knows what the heck he's about, but we'll get to him later. So enter Poe Dameron and his lone X-Wing, and he's got a plan, but he needs to buy some time, so he picks up the mic and calls General Hux, and proceeds to troll him, and the tension, whatever is left of it, just floods right out of the scene. Because we have this Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello-esque routine where General Hux is made a complete and total tool. And I have a problem with that. You would never see Tarkin trolled like that for all of his faults. And Tarkin had them. I mean, he was an arrogant ass who refused to evacuate the Death Star and was blown up for his trouble. But he was not a fool. He was not a moron. And he was not to be trifled with. And we don't even have to talk about Vader. Vader would have just force-choked Poe through the viewport. When Hux is treated this way, it completely cuts him off at the knees and changes everything about him. And he was portrayed as an equal to Kylo Ren, a foil, a right-hand man of Snoke. And in just those few minutes, he goes from the Moff Tarkin of the new trilogy to the Jar Jar Binks of the new trilogy. And it's sad because his character has a lot of potential and there's a lot of movie left, but we don't respect this guy anymore. We can't. Poe buys enough time to get his engines boosted, and he flies into the defense grid of the Dreadnought and starts taking out the point defenses. Some people have some heartburn over that, but I'm not one of them. I don't have a huge problem with it because we do get an explanation from the one guy who seems to know what the heck is going on, and that's Captain Kennedy. And he explains that the fighter is flying too close to the surface of his ship and that the guns can't zero in on it because of that. I buy that. I have no problem with that. But in the process, Kennedy does make himself look like quite the formidable character at the expense of General Hux, because he immediately remarks that he needs the fighters to be scrambled. And he specifically states, that should have happened 5 bloody minutes ago. And the moment that he does that, you find yourself nodding your head. Yeah, amen, brother. But when you do that, you're also acknowledging that Hux is an idiot. Whether you want to or not, whether you mean to or not, that actually happens. And Hux's credibility is further tarnished. They do deploy the fighters. There's a fight. There's a bit of a, fighter chase. It's cool. Okay. Good. Well shot. Looks pretty. Good effects. And Leia calls and says, hey, time to go. We're ready. Good job. Let's get out of here. Poe says, no. This is a fleet killer. We got to take this one off the board. And I got to tell you, that's going to come back to be very important. Now, enter the bombers. Now, that's another thing that a lot of people have heartburn about. And I'll be the first to tell you, I don't love the bombers. As a matter of fact, I pretty much hate them. But the thing about the bombers is, if they were the only problem, or one of a couple of minor problems, or the biggest problem even, with this movie so far, I could probably live with them. Because they are very much in keeping with the George Lucas tradition of having World War II in space. And so we get this big bomber run that's well shot, lots of explosions, action, good action sequence, and one by one, and then eventually 3 at a time, the bombers are shot down and there's only one left. And the one that's left has its bay doors closed, and Poe has this exchange between them. And the gunner is a Asian woman that we don't really know, and we'll find out later that she's related to a character. But right now, we have no emotional attachment to her. She opens the bomb bay doors, drops the bombs, the dreadnought explodes, taking with it the only competent bad guy we've had so far. The Resistance fleet jumps away, and Hux is again humiliated in front of the command crew by Snoke. Back on the Raddus, we get this kind of comedic routine again where Finn wakes up, bumps his head in the med tube, and falls out, and he's leaking fluid everywhere. And it's this kind of slapstickish moment where he meets Poe, and Poe kind of has this sort of comedic response, and it doesn't land particularly well. This is a moment that should be a sigh of relief. The audience should be able to go, oh, wow, they got through that one. And that really is robbed both by the complete lack of tension in the scene and by this infusion of humor that doesn't really fit. And so instead of being relieved and instead of having that moment of released tension, you have an audience that is physically cringing or eye rolling. And it doesn't bode well for the rest of your movie. So we cut to Leia slapping Poe on the face and demoting him. She's upset because he disobeyed a direct order and because of the high human cost of the Dreadnought assault. She's also trying to teach him a bigger lesson here, though, and that's important because she's trying to groom him as a commander. And you kind of can feel that and pick up on that with some of the tone of their conversation, but you don't really feel the magnitude of what she's really trying to do until really the end of the movie. She's essentially trying to groom him to take her place. And I think that's a great plot device. I think that gives you a great opportunity to turn Leia into the mentoring leader, giving her a chance to shine and give this new character Poe a chance to learn some lessons and to grow as a commander. There's just one problem. Poe's decision to take down this dreadnought, this tremendous Death Star-esque weapon, with the sacrifice of a handful of bombers and a couple of fighter escorts, is going to prove to be an excellent decision in about 2 minutes. Worse than that, she just took this guy that she's trying to groom for command and slapped his face in front of the entire command crew. This is a scene that is comparable to what Snoke does to General Hux. She takes this guy and belittles him in front of the entire bridge crew and expects these people to someday respect him. It's terrible leadership. And later, Holdo will cite this very moment as justification for the way she dismissively treats Poe after she assumes command of the Raddus, which really means that Leia takes a lot of ownership of that. The leadership in Battlestar Galactica takes a very different approach. Laura Roslin, while she's a little bit out of her depth still, because remember, she was just the Secretary of Education a few short weeks ago, and now she's leading the last 50,000 of humanity across the stars in a desperate gambit to get away from the Cylons, she still has this grace and dignity, and she still bears it with a certain amount of reservation. And so when Billy, her assistant, often puts himself in harm's way and makes some, what I consider to be some pretty dangerous statements to a woman who's under a lot of pressure, she never really abuses him for it. She never chastises him for it. The closest she ever comes is to say, Billy, I need some alone time right now. Can you leave me alone, please? But she never yells at him. She never belittles him. She never slaps him in the face. These are things that are beneath her dignity, and I really think it's beneath Leia's dignity, and I really don't like that moment. I don't like that beat, and it's terrible because it's Carrie Fisher's last moments on the screen, and her character, in my opinion, is very poorly handled there. If you look then to Adama, who's been commanding Battlestars for quite some time when this happens, his XO occasionally gets a little bit overzealous in the way that he pushes the crew. But when he does, Adama usually has a softer counter that kind of takes the edge off of Ty's rebuke, and when he gets the opportunity to address it with Ty, alone, when the two of them are by themselves, not within earshot of the command crew, hint, hint, he does a very nice job of handling Ty, of having a soft approach and saying, hey man, you know, it's good seeing you without the cup in your hand, and he has this nice little exchange with him, but when Ty doesn't seem to get the message, he's capable of saying, no, seriously, chill out. But he does it in an unobtrusive way and in a way that is a gentle rebuke and gets what he wants without having to slap someone in the face or scream at them or... So the proximity alarm on the bridge of the Raddus starts to go off, and we've cut to space and we see 6 Star Destroyers come out of light speed. And above them is this tremendously large ship that's immediately identified as Snoke's command ship. Now, one of the problems that I do have with this command ship's arrival is it's not equipped with the same weapons that you see on the Dreadnought, even though it dwarfs the Dreadnought and is Snoke's command ship, and you would think you would want it to have the best weaponry available. That is about all I'm going to say about that coincidence, because there's a much bigger and more frustrating coincidence about to be revealed, and that is the Resistance is out of fuel. Let me say that again. The Resistance ships are running out of fuel. Why is this a problem, you ask? Why did my eyes roll so far back in my head they almost detached my retinas? Because we are being told that the same moment that the First Order develops the ability to track ships through faster than light or light speed, something that's never happened before, our heroes' ships are running out of fuel. Something else that's never happened before. And the problem with this is we are beginning to stack coincidence upon convenient incompetence of an enemy, upon these other things that basically are beginning to really take away my suspension of disbelief. We are really eroding my ability to get into this moment and to believe that all of these things are happening at the same time to create this implausible, contrived, slow, boring sublight pursuit through space. So the same Leia who was just telling Poe that you can't solve all your problems by blowing stuff up in an X-Wing orders the Raddus to turn about and take on these 6 Star Destroyers and the command ship. They have no chance of winning. No good can come of this. So if their plan is survival, this is a problem because she just lectured Poe about how you can't solve all your problems with blowing things up in an X-Wing, and she literally grants him permission to jump in an X-Wing and blow something up. It undercuts the message that she was just trying to teach him. This is not the solution to their problem, unless their plan is to go out in a blaze of glory, in which case Butch Cassidy it up. But that is a very frustrating contradiction. Are we trying to teach this guy about command, or are we trying to go out in a blaze of glory? My head is spinning. I can't keep track. 3 minutes ago, we were getting our ass chewed because you don't do reckless stuff like that, blah, 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 blah. And then the next minute, well, let's just take them all on. I don't get it, and it doesn't fit. We cut to Kylo, who sorties with 2 or 4 of his fighter buddies, and they make a strafing run on the Raddus, and they do a significant amount of damage, including blowing up the hangar with all the fighters still on the ground, almost killing Poe. And the first thing that Poe says is, we got to get out of range of those Star Destroyers. We cut to the bridge, and Leia's saying, we got to get out of range of the Star Destroyers. So clearly they thought they could win this fight, but now suddenly they don't. And now is it okay if my head hurts? Is it okay if I'm confused about what we're trying to accomplish here? Because I don't know. Suddenly you lose a couple of fighters. Leia then explains to us how if we need to get further away, because if we can put distance between us and those ships, they won't be able to protect their fighters. The problem with that logic is it completely ignores that Poe just blew up the Dreadnought with nothing but a squadron of bombers escorted by fighters. Surely they have bombers on those 6 Star Destroyers and that impressive command ship. We've seen previous versions of TIE bombers in old Star Wars movies, so the idea that they need the Star Destroyers to provide support to the fighters and the bombers is pretty laughable, actually. Additionally, look at the damage that Kylo and his fighters have wrought on the Raddus and her ships in the short amount of time that they've been in the air. And this is only 4 fighters. There have got to be squadrons of fighters and bombers on those ships. And so none of these things that are being told to us make any sense. And it is so frustrating. And let's just continue and have the big talk at the end of this scene, because we're about to tease out. Kylo has his moment of temptation. He kind of does. He chooses not to blow up his mother as opposed to his father. But his wingman has no compunction about that. They blow a big old hole in the Raddus's bridge. Everybody is blown out into space. We will eventually have Leia Poppins, but you will not find that discussion had here. I guess somehow the Raddus pulls away from the Star Destroyers, and you begin to hear Hux tell Kylo, hey, you have to come back. We can't provide, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. So Kylo flies back a little frustrated, and we cut to Hux and his captain, who now tell us how the Raddus is able to somehow pull out of weapons range, but then can't pull out any further. And again, it's got this feel of, yeah, there's no real reason for this, but this is what the writer wanted us to have, was this long, drawn-out pursuit that really is more like a siege. And we're not really going to explain to you why they don't use their fighters. We're not going to really take the time to explain to you why they don't take their Star Destroyers and jump a couple of them ahead to cut the Raddus's retreat off. We're not going to explain to you why that huge ship doesn't have similar tech to the Dreadnought. We're not going to do any of those things, but you're just going to have to come along and believe us. And the problem is, I don't. And I'm not really asked to do that in Battlestar Galactica. In Battlestar Galactica, it's jump after jump after jump, and it all is a tightly woven story. The different threads create a nice tight fabric that complement the core story, and that is good, solid writing. This is maddening. It drives me crazy, and to be honest with you, by this point in the movie, I just want my money back. And unfortunately, we still have 2 hours of movie left. Well, I think that's just about going to do it for part one. I hope you guys have liked what you've heard. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it sparks some conversation and some debate. Feel free to leave some comments down below. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next installment. I've got at least 2 or 3 more parts of this thing. And I want to hear what you guys think. Have you seen 33? Do you like Battlestar Galactica? Do you like The Last Jedi? Do you share my great frustration and disappointment in The Last Jedi? Or do you think the Battlestar Galactica is actually a pretty terrible show? I want to hear what you have to say. I ask that you guys keep it civil if you do get into a conversation in the comments or Facebook, wherever you find this. I hope you do like what you hear. One of the reasons I do this is so you guys can hear me opine on art and storytelling and see if you like what you hear. And if you think that I have some pretty good concepts, maybe you want to check me out. talandiaz.com is my home base. You can find my author page at talandiaz on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. I'm not there very often, to be completely honest with you. And then I got this YouTube channel. This YouTube channel is probably going to become a big medium for me here in the coming months. My work is all available on Amazon. I write a dark space opera that I often label or tag as Battlestar Galactica meets Les Mis. I also have a detective noir that takes place on the moon, Lunatic City. Its sequel is about to come out in August. Pretty excited about that. My short story, Hero of Styx, appears in The Good, the Bad, and the Merc, a Four Horsemen universe anthology by creators Chris Kennedy and Mark Wandry. If you'd like a sample of my writing, you go to my website at talandiaz.com and click on the link to join my email list. You get a free short story called The Consultant. It's a prequel to my dark space opera trilogy. It follows a character named Leo Krasinski, a personal favorite of mine. And I've had a blast, but I think I'm going to have to get out of here. I got some writing to do. I got some other things to take care of. So thank you all for joining, and until next time, T. Allen is out.